Hello, welcome to Isle of Ruby. This is the unofficial recording of Nick Schwaderer's talk, and this is Nick Schwaderer. Two similar names. Don't know. Carl?
Two of them were
Are there any empty ones?
one of them are late. But they're saying that because Naomi was going abroad, so
maybe not in the best way because I'm not used to traveling anymore. Like UK
There's Constantine.
Hello.
Is the back working? Well, I can project.
I asked.
Oh, that's a good place to be a hobby.
True. Oh yeah. It's not one I'm particularly. It's something which I
They don't expect that of me, but they kind of
Alright, I will round it off your time.
I moved there in 2000, like this. There was, this is still when they still had chili. And we have much more of a sense.
You're like a bad politician.
We have more of a sense.
You're really making a statement to say,
I wouldn't say xenophobia, but
accepting
inward folk.
yeah. Even now that we had a very unfortunate election result, I still feel like it's bad. It's gonna get better.
Hello, everybody.
Hello.
Welcome back. I would recommend you all settling down and mentally preparing to listen to a talk. People in the back has the. Can you hear me? All right, because we have some news, some good news and some bad news on the mic situation. The bad news is none of the speakers back there are in any way connected to this mic. So there's no point in like trying to figure out. Only these two speakers are connected. The good news is, up until right now, only that speaker was connected, so we also have this speaker now. For the speakers, if you're on stage, giving a presentation, lightning talk or whatever, try to hold it close to your mouth or wherever your sounds are coming from. That you would like to share with us. Apologies. All right, and now we have Nick, the first Nick of that will give a talk, unless there are more Nicks at the conference, I think. So there will be some Nick giving the third Nick might give a lightning talk or something. He's an American living in Cornwall, working for OHQ, whatever that. Forgive me. He's originally from Montana. He's actually served 2 terms in state Congress. Is that correct?
Yeah.
That is quite interesting. And he's working on different Ruby projects to improve access to government, encourage personal financial literacy, and track militarized equipment used by law enforcement. Right. And also, his scaling intuition comes from previously working in a pizza factory that produced 200 million frozen pizzas per year. Alright, he's going to tell us about measuring chronic pain outcomes with Ruby and Twilio.
Thank you. Good morning. I'll just check for myself. Back row, you guys good? Okay, I don't have the best hearing. I was there yesterday, so I just want to make sure I'm reaching to the back of the room and I'm not deafening the front, hopefully. But before I get started, I just want to say something. As a Rubyist who does not, I've lived in very rural areas, so I've been working in Ruby for years, but I've only ever actually physically in the flesh met about 3 Rubyists. So it's so fantastic to have this, and just as a gratitude, I just wanted to say thank you to the organizers, to the volunteers, to the MCs. Can we just give them a round of applause? Seriously, this is mind-blowing. The people back home are like, oh, you're just going to a Devon thing, you know, an hour away. I'm like, no, you don't understand. Like, I think the Brits are in the minority here. It's insane.
There's so many Germans.
So many Germans. Right? We can have this with German or German speaking, so it's absolutely fantastic. Anyway, my name is Nick Schwaderer. I'm here to talk to you today about measuring chronic pain outcomes with the aid of Ruby and Twilio. Twilio gets a special mention, which I will get into more depth later. So just to kind of give you the order of the day, what I'll be talking about throughout this talk. First, I'm going to lay out a non-business problem, something that has nothing to do with work, and tell you the story behind it. Then I'm going to go into tackling that problem with the aid of Ruby and other tooling. There's a little meat emoji there because that's the meat of this talk. That's where the interesting stuff is going to happen. I had fun working with Remark.js for the first time, trying to make sure my emojis really popped on this. And the third part is going to be a bit of a retro. What were the outcomes of that work? And also what could have been improved, what went well, what did not. And of course, I got to end with a good moral, with a little heart emoji next to it. And if you take anything away from it, it'll be that moral. So to start out, who am I? Constantine covered it very well. I am Nick Schwaderer, doer of many things historically, currently Ruby. I used to live here in Superior, Montana. Biggest town in the county is 2,500 square miles, is about 700 people, and lots of mountains and snow and things like that. Now I live here in Schwaderer in Cornwall, so I went to university in Plymouth and ended up getting work in Cornwall over there. And I traded the mountains for the sea, which is quite nice. It's a lovely community. If you're sticking around, it is on the train. It's got a bunch of nice little pubs and restaurants, all flat if you're walking. Everything pole dark, and it's got and I'm staying on a 900-year-old bridge there, which is quite cool. I work at Oceans HQ, which is a small family-owned company in Torpoint in Cornwall, and what we do, I just grabbed this image, has to do with this. So we sell SaaS products, just a few of them for the registry of vessels. So if you have an oil tanker, a cargo ship, any of these big ships you see on the high seas, they have to be registered and flagged with the nation. And for the process that these bureaus undergo to maintain international treaty compliance and just do their day-to-day work, they use our product. It's very nice to be in a small company and have 9 nations, including Switzerland, using our software, which is fun. However, I'm not covering that. If you want to talk about that, meet me at the bar later and we'll go into all these things about shipping, but I'm not going to be talking about work, and that's the point. What I'm going to be talking about is myself and my lovely fiancée, Laura. And if you'll notice, there's a little laptop down there that is currently recording me because she hasn't had a chance to see me give this talk. So she's going to be watching this. So like at the end, really hoop it up. And so that brings me into part 1, which was the problem. And I'll take you back to summer 2017 and really going back into the prior December. Laura started experiencing pain in her right hip. And gradually got worse. You know, at first it's kind of like, oh, I'm just a bit achy in my hip today. Then it got a little worse, a little worse. She started going to physio or physical therapy and did everything they said and went through all their recommendations. However, the pain again would get worse and worse and worse until we were led to taking an x-ray, which led to taking an MRI. And next thing we know, we're in a doctor's office, and she was given the diagnosis of having a vascular necrosis of the hip. Now, what is vascular necrosis? Without going into a talk's length dissertation about this, essentially, it is a situation that you can, and also we don't know what caused it in this case, because it could be caused by an adverse reaction to steroids or severe alcoholism. And whereas Laura is from Ireland, like, we don't drink that much. We've never figured that out, but she definitely did have this, and it was a blood loss supply to a region of bone, and the bone dies, and it collapses, and it's incredibly painful. And the only option for that is a total hip, well, not the only option, but the option for her in her case was a total hip replacement, which is very uncommon for a woman in their 20s to have a total hip replacement. But during the course of this, so we were faced with not just getting to that point, but coping with chronic pain, and also knowing there was going to be many more months until the surgery, and then there was going to be many more months of recovery. We were a bit concerned, and the surgeon said, not quite in passing, but he said that it's, just so you know, with the people I've worked with, it's not a wives' tale that barometric pressure will have an effect on joint pain. So if you experience joint pain and there's a swing, just so you know, that'll have an effect, which got me to thinking, right? So we developed a lifestyle where if we wanted to go to the beach or we wanted to go have drinks with friends or do anything, the pain was like an extra person in our party and we didn't know what they were going to be like on that day. She could be totally like above board, well behaved, not push it and be in horrible, excruciating pain. Or she might push it a bit and be great. So we had no predictability with this. And it was frustrating and it dominated our lives in a very big way. But I thought barometric pressure systems are very predictable, right? So if you look at the forecast, like with rain, you may get 80%, you may get a sprinkle, you may get a bit. But whereas there's some variability with the change in pressure, they're big systems. They go through, you can have pretty good predictability on what the pressure is going to be like today. So that sparked something in my head. And I had to pitch it to Laura, right? So I was thinking, this is an interesting thing. Maybe there's something here. So we sat down at the negotiation table and talked through the possibilities and what we could do, a bit of give and take. And what came out of that was she said, you know what, I'm going to step up. I'd like to help tracking and measuring her pain over time. But in return, I was going to start check my calories. So I used to be a much bigger man. I know, she just strikes a hard deal, but you know, but it was. It's that way she's tracking something, I was tracking something as both for health. So that brings us into the second component, the meat emoji again, and solving this with the aid of Ruby and Twilio. Now, before you lay down your code, you want to set out your goals and expectations, and this is basically what we wanted to do. We wanted to get as many pain readings as possible. We wanted to marry those to the current barometric pressure and then process them. So once we've got that set up, okay, we know what we want to do. Here's the setup that we actually deployed. First off, web UI was out of scope for this, right? So and also as a primarily, I do front end a bit, but as a primarily back end Ruby on Rails developer, like not working with CSS is an idea that I'd be like, that would be awesome. I just don't want to think about colors. I just want to think about the utility of this application. But here's what we wanted, right? I want to be able to randomly notify her without building a whole mobile application. I want to be able to get an input. I want to only have one user. I didn't want to sell some SaaS startup thing. So actually we found out that Twilio and SMS was the best shot for this. And put your hands up if you played with Twilio. It's okay if you haven't. Yes, my people. So as you know, Twilio gives you access to a bunch of stuff. I've worked with their voice, but SMS, you want to take and send texts and goof around. And I gotta give them props on one more slide. It's a smooth ride. If you know Ruby and you've never done anything with text and you've never messed with Twilio, in 3 minutes you could be sending and receiving them. Sign up, get your $1 phone number, hook up your keys, and go to town. It's amazing. And there's a few more considerations for mounting this on a Rails backend. You have to give them a little more information and integrate it in to go as robust as we did, but it was amazing. And Twilio they found out I was giving this talk and they've been messaging me a bunch like, hey, thanks for talking about this. And I'm just, if this video I'm recording, Twilio, thank you. Keep doing those Ruby docs. They're so good. Like this is my fear is that like these big companies will just say, well, I don't know about Ruby and stop doing the docs. But as long as they keep doing it, then I'm going to keep loving Twilio, right? And this goes for a lot of other companies out there. We also hooked up Weather Underground. For those of you that don't know, they have access to all the weather data, plus about 25,000 independent weather stations that submit since the 90s they've been going. And there's a really handy gem that's been around for ages that I was just able to put into my Rails app, put in a postcode, and get the latest barometric pressure. And which brings me to a point on just kind of a selfish slide talking about units of measure for a second. So we're talking about measuring barometric pressure. There's a few options that we have here. So the SI unit is kilopascals. So, and to think, well, what's the, and then that's, as I say here, 1 Newton per square meter. So yeah, totally get that. But the average barometric pressure at sea level globally would be about 101 kilopascals. The U.S., I don't know what we actually use in weather, but I know we have PSIs, right? What you put in your tires, right? Like, oh, how many PSIs is my tire? Pounds per square inch? And that's about 15 at that same level. The one that Weather Underground returned was inches of mercury. I don't know if you played with inches of mercury, but it's a particular device setup, and it's how many inches up the mercury is at the time. And I didn't particularly like that unit because it hovered between like 29.2 inches and 30.8 inches or whatever. And it's like, man, that doesn't want, I don't get out of bed in the morning to look at those numbers, you know? And it's programmers, you know, it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter what the numbers are. You just transform them into whatever you want. Then, of course, you have 1 atmosphere. That's, depending on the planet you're on, is 1. But millibars is what I went with because it's easy to convert from inches of mercury. And if you, from just the one reference to shipping with where I work, the captains would have had a barograph on their ship, which was in millibars, and it was like a piece of paper with a pen. They'd rotate once a week, and they just show you where the pressure is going, and I liked it. So the average for like here would be about 1013.25, just to set a standard, and then it would, unless you had a hurricane, it would go between about 980, 1020, maybe 1030, but those are numbers that you can kind of, you know, mentally draw something around. So then the world's simplest object, I didn't set up any relations, any polymorphism, nothing, right? All I cared about was storing the barometric pressure and the pain level. I actually didn't even care about the time. I mean, I'm not going to ditch the timestamps, but that's all I wanted to see. And it's an amazing amount of significant figures that Weather Underground was giving me on barometric pressure. But I took it anyway. I didn't need half of them, but there you go. That was the easy bit though, right? As you know, as developers, the code problems are not the painful, difficult parts. It is the user interaction. And, you know, normally you think, okay, I've got a couple customers who email me sometimes, and if I don't do this right, they might send me an email. Okay, but in this case, the user was one, and the user was the person I live with, and I'm going to live with for the rest of my life. And so if she's having a poor experience with this, I'm having a poor experience, and I'm having a bad day, right? So it was so critical to get this right, and that she had a good experience with interacting with this application. So let's go into how that went. The core flow for how it would actually work in practice was I would have her randomly messaged 5 times a day. So that would be, and the reason behind the randomness here, there are pain diaries out there. You may have heard of them. But my fear is that there's self-selection might creep in. You'll know, oh gosh, the pain's really bad. I'm definitely going to write it right now. But with randomness, we want the low numbers just as much as we want the high numbers. So between about 8 a.m. and 10 p.m., we'd randomly send messages out 5 times a day. And we would tweak that depending on if bedtimes are changing. If we were going to bed earlier, wouldn't want her getting a text message. This was a little mean, but it would only process on a return input. So we'd capture the pain reading, and it would only count towards the 5 if something was sent. So if she thought, you know, I'm not going to respond to that, she'd like, why did I get 6 today? I'm like, well, you may not have responded to one of them. And then, of course, as I said earlier, with the help of a little tornado emoji, we're going to marry that to the barometric pressure and then deal with the edge cases. Because as much as you anticipate in your MVP prototype deploy it, you're going to hit your edge cases and have to deal with them in real time. And the biggest one for me was unexpected user input. So with Twilio, anything coming in is going to be a string, right? Whatever they send to you is going to be a string, and you have to convert it. We were using a scale of 1 to 10, just integer. We've talked after about tweaking that, and we think we still would stick with that to this day. But that doesn't. There's no UI to stop and validate on the other end before it comes over. So if I get something like, and that's I sanitize it for the talk. And I only showed one. But you guys probably already know this. It's not going to break, is it? So that was a massive danger point, and if it weren't for a Laura confession, I don't know if that would have been caught. Because then, and also, think of the inverse, right? What situation is she going to be in where she's going to text the thing F off? A very high pain day, right? She'd be like, I don't even care about you, I don't care about what we're doing, I'm in a lot of pain. So we're getting a 0 when we're probably a 9. So it's very important that we caught that. And so you just handle it. That is not what it was. I edited that also for the talk. It was a little more personal. And by the way, just to check if it's an angry response, literally all you have to do is if it evaluates to 0 and the string is equal to that string is 0, or if it's then you're like, okay, yeah, it's fine. But if it evaluated to 0 and it wasn't 0, okay. But also, you could get other things like if she double tapped a number, which did happen. I mean, 66. Like we as much as we thought the pain was bad, we would never degrade ourselves to the point of going off of a scale, right? Like it was like, no, we know that 10 is the threshold. There is no world beyond 10. And to be fair to her, she actually never put 10, even though I probably would have in her case many, many times. But for that, like that, you can't catch everything. So really, I would adjust these things in line at the time where I could, but then I'd do post-processing after. And then I wanted to go proactively. I wanted to make it a positive experience to encourage user input. So I thought, Giphy integration would be great. I know she likes things that are funny to do with dancing and cats. So I just set up a quick Giphy set of API keys, hooked in, pulled in a random group, sampled one of the 23, and would just let her know that it's successfully saved on the back end. But here's the thing, right? Like, okay, cool, Nick, you're great. No, see, but here's another problem. You have to ensure that it's sensitive to the situation, because again, if she's on a 9-day, is she going to care about some funny gif of a guy dancing? Probably not. Mm-hmm. So the next level that we went to was kind of breaking these out in a very simple statement, but important for the interaction. If she had a higher pain level, we would do a particular set of messages that had no GIF. If it was middle or low, then we had different tiers of messages for that. That allowed us to be lighter-hearted on the easier days. It doesn't all fit, but you don't need to read all of that. I mean, I was editing these things all the damn time because, she's like, I've seen that message before. I was like, okay, sorry. And if you look at my commits for this, it's just shoving copy into these arrays. The rough days, and won't stay here too long, or I might get emotional. All right, so excuse me. So that's kind of the process of going through it. And we had a few interesting outcomes and retrospectives. And this is one that she recommended, and I didn't think about it because it wasn't really coding, but it's about how we view pain. And I'm going to mention this for her. When we were in the hospital after the surgery, the way that they issue pain medication is based on a 10 scale, right? But they've objectified the subjective scale. They didn't take a baseline for her. They didn't know what the numbers meant to her body. And they just simply said to her, if you're not above a 7, we're not going to give you Ormorph. And she was in horrible pain, right? So she'd be sat there and not trying to, she's given me authorization to say all these things. She's the one who told me to submit this. I wouldn't have done it without her blessing. But she would, thanks. But she would be there holding my hand. She'd be crying. And then she'd say, well, no, this is the scale that I did. It was a 7. So, I've never really went above 7 very much. I'm like, okay. Like, well, you're not above a 7, so no pain meds for you, right? And it was just amazing. So she actually was one of the people who was most attuned to her pain level, even though there's a level of subjectivity. She did this for months, so she knew what a number was to her, but she had to change it for the hospital. I don't know if there's a way to improve it, unless it's just lie every time. I mean, we ended up having to change our scale for theirs, even though theirs wasn't very scientific in my opinion. Also about making things mobile. So think about it. Barometric pressure is location specific. But she was in a lot of pain and we didn't have a lot going on those few months. So really, we only went to like 2 places that were away from home that time. We went to her family in Belfast, so I just literally did a manual coordinate reset for Belfast in the core app. And I think we may have done 1 day and a half somewhere else, and I did a manual reset. But it's not a long-term solution. Like if other people are saying, hey, we would like to participate in this, we'd like to help add some data, there'd have to be something else. And I have to talk with you guys at the bar about it, because I don't want to build a mobile app. I don't want people to have to enter more data about where they're at, but I got to figure out where they are probably more dynamically for this to be usable elsewhere. But that was a retrospective about a problem that is yet to be solved if we were to continue with this. So those were the 2 about the process, but now I want to process this information, right? How do we see if we can have some forecasting and be able to see how reliable it is, and be honest with ourselves. If it's bad, it's bad. If it's good, it's good. At the end of the day, regardless of what this is about to reveal, this gave us hope for a few months. It gave us a thing that she wasn't under control of her pain completely. She was being proactive and I was doing my best to help to do something to really just cope and have hope, right? But we weren't going to let that force us into jimmying the numbers any which way or other. And I'm not telling you, I'm not leading anything on here. But let's go into it. So first thing, didn't need to do this, but so we did a little sanitization. There's a few other methods. So there was 1 or 2 times the barometric pressure API was goofed and it was a 0. So clear those out, clear out the bad information, dump them into a 2-dimensional array, write it to a CSV so I could hand it to non-technical individuals and they could open it in Excel and work with it if they wanted. Again, data privacy, like this was all side by side with Laura. None of this was me stealing her private health data and handing it out on the slide. Visualize it with a graph. I'm not going to spend too much time here, but you notice it is, and I talked to her about this 2 days ago, and I said, would you change anything with the decimal? And she said, I think going another significant figure would be too much. But she said that halves may have been useful. If you're like, you know what, I had a 3 this morning, and it's worse than that, but it's not as bad as last night's 4. So maybe a half, but still, like, there's useful data there, but it does goof with the visualization. But then let's process this. I've never touched machine learning in my life until this project. But I have to give props to practicalai.com. Has anyone heard of this? Okay, I would go. It is a series of blog posts and GitHub repositories, as recent as a few months old, that talk about standard machine learning implementations and give you GitHub repos with data sets that walk you through step by step, i.e. you can fork it and run it, and you can goof with it. That's the best way that I learn anything. So the approach that we went, and this could be a 45-minute talk by itself, but we use a support vector machine, which is basically a supervised learning algorithm. It takes in a set of training data, you set aside some test data, and you see basically how it's going. That's the simple, non-3-hour explanation of that. And I gotta give props. So much of the code that you may see, just use your Dalgard. I don't know if my Scandinavian friends could tell me if I even said that right. Lives in New Jersey. I can't even believe the stars on this. Fork this and mess with it for it. It is amazing. So on top of getting the training data and the test data together, we had to find the best what are called C and gamma values. And on the low level, so a larger C will give you a lower bias and higher variance in the model, and a low C will give you a higher bias and low variance, and the gamma defines how far a single training example will have influence. Or, in layman's term, it's just 2 parameters you can tweak. And you can do like a double and O(n) squared, and these possible values go through it and actually see for your data set which are the most helpful in this case, and iterate through. And this is code from the previous repo, right? So to do that, you divide it into 3 data sets. So you'd have your training data set, you'd have your optimization data set that would run against this and see what best percentages you got, and then you'd have your final test, which said, okay, against the data that you haven't seen, how well are you doing? But I'm doing that, I'm going to be honest with you. The best I could get was 24.43%. Now on 10 possible numbers, realistically 9 is not as bad as random, but it's not ideal. And this was literally going to be it. This was going to be my only conclusion for ages when I submitted the CFP. But a couple of weeks ago, I had a dig in the code again. And I thought, well, is there anything here I'm missing? Is there anything that's not quite right? And then I thought, well, what if I cared more about close than exact? Because this was exact numbers. This was, if it was a 6, was it a 6, right? I realized that's not all the value proposition here. What if it was within 1? Like, if you forecasted an 8 and you got a 7, I mean, it's subjective enough, right? Like, doesn't that still have some value? So running these numbers against that, we got to 60.34%, which made us happy. This is on a small data set as well. This is only, we're very proud of this data, but again, over months, we've only got about 240 points, so it's not big data, but it's something, it's real human, meaningful data. She worked so hard to give honest numbers and give them consistently. And within 2, I think, is far too wide, but we did get 90% on that. So, I mean, there's something to be said that makes me interested. And also, just a visualization takeaway. So this is interesting. So if you can't see, you can see in the back, you've got the monitors. So we've got 980 ppms and 1040, or not ppms, that's CO2. Barometric pressure, 1040 and 980, and then we've got our 10 scale here. But what's interesting is, so you can tell our pressure kind of hovers around here. I'm like a weatherman over here. You know? but this is very, very important. So once we get above a certain level, it was like 1020 or 1024. We have like almost a few dozen that are 30 points over about was 1020 or 1024, where not one day did she record under 4. Not once, not even an outlier, not like, oh, I'm randomly having a really good day and it's less than 4. There's this hole right here, which I find really interesting. There's not enough on the low for me to be excited because it just didn't get that low that much, but not even one random dot out here. She didn't have a random 2 on those days. So that is an interesting component of the hypothesis. So other thoughts on the future here. We want to measure the closeness continually. I'd love to increase the data set size. Laura's had a hip replacement. Her hip's great now, guys. So like, it's awesome. But people still have chronic pain. So if there's anybody in here who has interest and wants to contribute to the data set or learn, I'm happy to share the data set. Laura is happy to share the data set. And if we did get more data and worked on this over time with other Rubyists, and also Rubyists to help with the processing, more machine learning people, and increase this data, I'd love to work on forecasting. So the moral is this. It's not toys or job, right? Like when you work with Ruby, it's not just toys or just your job. You have a special skill, and it's sometimes hard to realize that. And also something, this was one object, man. Like this wasn't a crazy abstraction and Rails engines and all this stuff. This wasn't incredibly insane. This was actually pretty straightforward. But it was really important though, right? Like something that you might whip out in 5 minutes might be life-changing for someone whose idea is just as valid, but they don't have the ability, and you can really help with that. And also from a selfish perspective, it gives you access to new toolings and experiences. I mean, I got to play with Twilio in a meaningful way, and also dip my toe into machine learning that wasn't just reading blog posts and weird articles and trying to get abstract concepts. I actually used it. So I explained to you a non-business problem in my personal life and Laura's personal life, talked about how we solved it with Ruby, went through the future and some of our learnings from that, and really, hopefully, gave you a moral about what we should do with this. Thank you so much for your time. I don't have time for questions because I'm right on time. Hit me up in the bar, we'll talk all night. Thank you so much.